Hello everyone, welcome back to Garage Story. So earlier this year I sold a Toro Zero Turn to a friend and he gave me his old mower, this one right here, and I used it for a while to pull a cart around the yard, but I noticed it had a few issues and I wanted to get those issues fixed, so let's go break a wrench. Alright, so we have brought the Craftsman DLT3000 into the shop, and let's just go over a little bit of the things that we have noticed with it. First of all, I just noticed just now, most of the tires are flat. That's not a big deal. It took them a while to go flat, so we will just air them up. It's not really worth the time and money on these to go through and fix all these tires. At least I don't feel like doing that on this one. We have tires, we're ignoring that one, so put that on the list and then mark it off. Next of all, the seat needs to be re-glued. I think I probably will go ahead and do that. That's cosmetic, that's pretty easy, pretty simple. Now mechanically speaking, this mower is hard to start sometimes. I'm not exactly sure why it is, but sometimes you turn the key and not much happens. Like you hear like click, like it's trying to turn over the engine, almost like it's a weak battery, and then sometimes it'll turn over fine. And I've noticed that sometimes it just clicks, but then if you arc the solenoid, it'll try to crank the engine. So all that to say, we don't know exactly what's going on there. Could be that it needs a new battery. It could be that it needs a new starter. Could be that it needs a new starter solenoid. And it could have to do with the compression release in the engine. Now there's a couple other things. One is, I believe one or more of these front spindles may be worn out, so we'll try to jack it up and give those a look-see and see how they're doing. And thirdly, as far as mechanical things go, the blade brakes on here are not working. That is something I may ignore. I don't really like doing that, but it's like the mower is fully functional. So, and I have a lot of these mower decks, so I probably could get parts from another one if I needed to. But anyway, let's dive into the issues with starting and see if we can get that resolved. Okay, so currently, I'm gonna try to start it, but not a whole lot happens. My solenoid is clicking loud and clear. So I'll arc the solenoid, we get a little bit of something here. It tries to crank over the engine, but doesn't have enough power. So I feel like this is more of a lack of juice. Let me get my voltmeter. Yeah, after trying to start it there, I am just under 12 volts. So there's a good chance that it's actually just a bad battery is our culprit. Let's hook up the jumper cables right now and see if that fixes everything. I ran over these jumper cables years ago, but they still work. So I've just been making do with kind of funky jumper cables for a while. Okay, so it's not making any difference. I'm showing 12.38 volts, which is actually still a little low. I'm gonna try arcing the solenoid with the jumper battery on there. See what happens. I'm gonna put this directly to the starter. It's easy, just ground it to my exhaust pipe. That was interesting. When I connected directly to the starter, it fired right up. Alright, so the battery it was climbing, the voltage was climbing. I turned it off when it got to 12.5 volts. So I feel like the charging system is at least somewhat working. Let's try it again. So the battery's not doing anything. I think we may have multiple issues, but I feel like this battery may be bad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this battery out, throw it on the charger, then put my load tester on there and see what it looks like. But I think the battery's tired, and it's possible that my starter solenoid is also an issue. Because the fact that I was able to jump directly to the starter and everything worked out implied that either my starter solenoid was the issue, or I was just getting a bad connection on here, or the battery is dead enough that it was sucking too much juice directly in there instead of going directly to the starter. So a couple of options, but I'm gonna pull the battery out, see if I can get it charged up. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and let the battery charge for a while, and while it's doing that, we're gonna go ahead and first air up the tires to make it a little easier to move around here possibly, and then secondly, we're gonna go ahead and see if we can jack up the front end and see what's going on with the front spindles. Alright, got the tires aired up. Let's check out these front spindles now. We are looking for play in there. That is sliding in and out on the axle shaft, okay. We've got the up and down. There's a little bit of play in this spindle shaft. It's not just up and down. Okay, yeah, I think there are some wear on these spindles. I think I have another axle sitting out there. So let's go see what we can find in the great scrap metal pile. Spoiler alert, I already saw an axle here a few minutes ago when I was looking at something else. There's an axle right there. Is it the same? It's possible, maybe a little too rusty. I don't think it's gonna work. These spindles are towed out a lot more than those ones. And you can see like the top of this, the wishbone or whatever you call it, is sloped up and that one's sloped down. So the question is, do I have another axle out there that I would want to swap in there? That one actually looks like it would be a direct fit. I think this one will actually be a direct fit. So try to pop this one out of here real quick. This one should drop right in there. This one would have been an upgrade and I don't think it would have dropped right in there. It's possible am I saying that right? Actual axle. It's possible that the axle itself would have swapped in over here into this type of bracket, but this is what we need. And I think it felt fairly tight. It's kind of hard to tell with it just hanging loose. Should be a pretty direct swap over now. We may need to clean up this spindle over here though, since that was sitting in the ground a little bit. I think it'll be good. I think I'm gonna need to remove this muffler shield here so I can jack up the front of the frame, because normally I would jack off of the axle, but I'm replacing the axle, so that probably won't work real well. These 4 bolts here, those 4 bolts there, and then this one here is really tight. I already dropped off the deck from these brackets right there. Axle is out. All right, so here are the 2 axles. This is the old axle, this is the new one. The brackets, the deck mounts too, are kind of bent over here, and you could easily swap that piece out. It looks like it's just held in by these 2 bolts. The old axle is very loose, but it's a little sloppy. Yeah. Now the new one is very tight. It does not have hardly any slop actually in that spindle. Unfortunately, the steering spindles are a little bit tight. They're not frozen, but they're not super loose. I did put some fresh grease in them and tried to loosen them up some, but I think that's as good as it's going to be for right now. I don't really want to drop them out and try to clean them up all the way like that. I don't think it's really an issue. They'll probably loosen up more as we use it. Next thing up is to basically throw the new axle in and install the wheels and tires, and we're done with this portion. Alright, I am back on the Craftsman DLT3000, and it has been a while since I've worked on this. It's kind of been sitting over here for a little bit. I am thinking about keeping this mower now to use it to test parts, like transmissions, because that's the primary thing. If you have a mower with a bad engine, you can't test the transmission very well. Anyhow, let's jump to a time lapse and get this thing going. Alright, got it pretty much back together. Needed to use the heat gun here to get the caps soft enough to slip over the washers in there, because the caps were pretty brittle and stiff. I also adjusted the steering wheel to get it straight because it was pretty crooked, and I'm noticing it's still a little crooked. I think it needs to go over 1 notch. It's really easy. It's just a 1/2-inch bolt here. This way. I think that's better than it was. Got the axle on there, muffler bracket on there, wheels on there, and greased caps on there. Okay, so I'm gonna take the deck off here and see if I can figure out what's going on with the blade brakes. And I think it may just be kind of a common issue on these. So I'm just gonna take it off and see if there's anything that's obviously standing out to me. I'm looking at it with it on there, and it seems like everything is right, but maybe something needs to be lubricated up or adjusted a little bit more so it contacts a little bit more. And then I may actually need to buy a new battery for it, and I don't have one yet, so we do need to try to figure out the hard starting issue as well, but we'll take the deck off right now. This deck is not as easy to take off as some of the decks, but it's not too bad. So you got your pins up front, which you can take off either end of, or of these drag links, I guess you could call them, those rods. Then you got this one right here, and you got the other one on the opposite side, and then you got this oddball side to side one here on the back. So you basically got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 5 points, plus you got your blade engagement cable right here, which isn't too bad. I'm probably gonna try to scoot this thing out the other way. Looks like there's a little more room over there. Shouldn't be too bad. Forgot to mention, you gotta get your belt off also. That's a blade brake. It looks like it's doing what it's supposed to do right there. This over here is a blade brake, and it's going somewhere in there. Feels like it's contacting it, which is what it should do. So in theory, when you engage this, I feel like this might just need to be cleaned up and lubricated, honestly. That should move this. Okay, and it does. So when it's engaged, the blade brake is pushed off somehow down here. We may have another deck that we can go look at to compare. You know what I think part of the issue may actually be is that there's nothing that disengages the blades. I can push this back and forth just fine. Nothing's disengaging the blades. So I don't know that it's really a blade brake issue. I think it might just be that we need a return spring for disengaging the blades. Oh yeah, look, there's a notch right here. Right there. I think we're missing a spring. Let's go see if we can find another deck that's the same design and maybe see if we have another spring sitting around somewhere. First off, do we have any decks in the scrap metal pile? I don't think so. Okay, here's one right here. This is an old style. Okay, this one has a mechanical system that engages. By mechanical, I mean it's not a cable. This one is not a cable engaged one. There's no bracket for the cable back here. Okay, so we don't want that deck. This one here looks more like what we're looking at. And what do you know? There's a little spring right there. Yep, there's the cable bracket. But here is the return spring. That's what we're missing. That spring is pretty winky dink. Oh, and it looks like it's half broken anyway. I may see if I can find a better spring. Maybe even on one of these scrap mowers down here or something. Got these over here ready to head to the crusher. That spring is way too long. It's a hot day and I need a spring. Oh. Here's a little guy, that might work. It feels a little weak, but honestly pretty similar. I'll say that's a win. We have another possibility there. Let's go see what we got cooking. The spring should go, now I can't remember. Oh, come on, I need to go back and look and see where I took this off. You know, because you were watching the video and I went and looked at a bunch of other stuff and promptly forgot. So I think the blade brakes are working. I think we just need to lubricate this thing a little bit so this spring can kind of help pull things back. Yep, I think that's gonna work. I think that spring saved us. I like that a lot better. I think I need to go ahead and throw this back together. I may try to throw some PB Blaster down the cable and lubricate it as well, so that's not an issue. Yeah, it looks like I put the spring in the right spot. There's the rusty mark from the spring going down through here, so I think we're okay with that. We had a mower with a deck like that when I was a kid. It was the mechanical linkage one, not the cable. And my dad, he had to repair that chute because that plastic breaks out around that hinge there. Now on that kind of deck, you kind of want the chute working. So he had some metal flat strap, just kind of thin galvanized stuff. And he bent it and basically formed the bracket that went over the top of this that bar went through. Worked out pretty good. Needed a little touch up every so often. All right, so let's throw this deck back in there. All right, so I think we got that deck fixed. Should work well now. So the deck's down all the way so you can kind of see in here a little bit. Okay, so that should be engaged. Should be disengaged. Engaged. Disengaged. Yeah. And I think it does help if you let it slam open a little bit. I got this just popped down there to disengage. I think that might help a little bit. Looks like it's working pretty well now either way. Probably doesn't make a big difference. So now, at this point, I have to decide if I want to try to tackle the hard starting issue without having a known good battery. I have been charging up this battery that was in there, and it's kind of... So do I want to go ahead and try to troubleshoot that without a good battery or not? I'm not sure if it's worth it. I kind of think I want to have a good battery, so I know that that's not the issue. All right, we are back on the Craftsman DLT3000. So we got the deck working the other day. Prior to that, we replaced the front axle. So now what I want to do is try to focus on the hard starting issues, which are somewhat intermittent. So it may be hard to work on that because I have a brand new battery. It may work great with that battery, and that may be the solution, or it may just hide the problem. Don't really know. So we're gonna go ahead and throw the new battery in here. And if we have time after we've dug into the hard starting issues, we may also try to get the seat glued back down to its pan. That would be great. And once we've resolved both of those issues, this mower is really done. It's ready to move on. Let's throw the new battery in there. These batteries from Walmart have handles on them now. Makes it pretty convenient. All right, got the battery bolts cleaned up and the battery cable ends cleaned up and reinstalled. We should be ready to try this thing out now. And I had an epiphany. I was like, I'm spending all this time wire brushing these things off and they're not gonna be as nice as new, but it just takes time and I don't have much time. And I've done this so many times. Why don't I just buy like a bunch of new battery bolts so that I don't have to clean them up? I can just replace them, swap them out. They're not corroded or anything. Why don't I do that? Maybe I should. Maybe I need to think about that. Maybe I need to take some in, match them up. Let's get a bunch of them, because lawnmower battery bolts are all pretty similar. And then I won't waste all this time trying to clean them off with a wire brush. I'll have to decide. Let's see how this thing runs. What do you think? Zero issues or issue? There we go. That's what we're talking about. So like we have a brand new battery that we charged up. Just getting a click here. So now it's time for the troubleshooting. This is perfect. I wanted it to act up so we could fix it. So my starter solenoid is right in here. That could be the issue. To find out, I need to get my screwdriver in there and see if I can arc it. I couldn't find my screwdriver I normally use for this stuff, so I'll use my secondary alternate, which is pair of channel locks. I've done that a lot with channel locks. See if I can get them in here without frying myself. Make sure the key is to the run position. Let's choke it. Yep, this is the same problem that we were having before. I think it's a bad starter solenoid. I wasn't quite sure because previously what was happening was we were getting kind of that squeal sound, like ee, and it wasn't quite turning the engine over. Maybe that was a battery that was getting older. Maybe we have a combination of things. I don't know, but right now it's definitely acting like a bad starter solenoid because it's getting power to it. You can hear it clicking, so the key is working fine. And you could verify that with the voltmeter, but it is not pulling the contacts all the way across in there. But when I arc them with the channel locks, fires right up. Key's working, it runs. It really sounds like it's got a bad starter solenoid. So, can you see if we can find another solenoid? I think the first thing we're gonna do is basically try to pull this solenoid out. And you gotta be careful because the solenoid is actually permanently hot. So we're gonna disconnect our positive up here. Disconnect something, try not to fry yourself. On a mower, you're probably not gonna hurt yourself really that much. Officially, you're supposed to disconnect the ground first. On a mower, it probably doesn't really matter that much. Just be careful. But yeah, we're gonna disconnect that so we don't arc anything over. And then basically you pull off this bolt, this slides out, and you can kind of pull the whole assembly out here. At least hopefully you can. If we can't do that, then we just have to remove the battery tray, which is these two bolts, and then we have good access straight down in there. I changed my mind. I'm gonna remove the battery tray because it's gonna be easier to disconnect the wires on the solenoid with the solenoid still mounted. That way you have some leverage. We'll just do it the right way. All right, got the battery tray out. Right here, that was pretty quick and easy. Got the battery, of course, out. Got the solenoid disconnected, and now I just need to pull it out of that little slot hole on the side. It should come free. Here we go. It actually fell apart while we were working on it. So this thing pulled right out of there when I hit it with my ratchet. This thing's got a little bit of power, but it's not like an impact or anything, and it just twisted that right out of there, and it actually started breaking up the other one when I started doing that. So if this thing wasn't toast before, it's toast now, and we need to go ahead and locate another one. It's kind of cool. I've never taken one of these apart. Let's go find another solenoid. Ooh, that one's pretty rusty crusty. Let's see. There's one. That's what we want. Same style as what we got. Let's go see if this one works. This one actually does not look super dirty, so that's good. All right, time for reassembly. All right, got it back together. First try here. Absolutely nothing. Wow, okay. That's not a good sign, but I can't really be too surprised about that because this is an old solenoid that was sitting out there. I may actually have to buy a new solenoid. To make sure we're not off our rocker, we're gonna arc the solenoid again, make sure that actually still does something. Okay, that solenoid was a no-go. We will have to see if we can find another one. I may have one here in the shop. That's a bummer. Took a little bit of time there to put that in and out. It'll be faster the next time. I didn't put these in all the way. That's what happens sometimes when you use used parts, and the only reason to use them is because they're cheaper. I found this other solenoid over on my workbench, so let's throw this in there and see if this one works any better. I don't know if this one's a good one or not. It's pretty clean. Third solenoid is in here, if you're including the original. Think it'll work? Getting a nice strong click, but no action. Reconfirm that arcing the solenoid still does what it should. Seems like that solenoid doesn't work either. Well, that's a bummer. So it seems like we may need to go for a fourth solenoid here, and I may actually just buy a new one instead of wasting my time here, because I want this thing to work pretty well. Solenoids go bad. That's a part of life. Yeah, I'll update you after I think about this for a minute. Or longer. Okay. Any more solenoids over here? Alright, so I purchased a new solenoid. It's not exactly the same, but this is what the local store had. I think it'll work fine. I don't really think it'll be a big issue. The biggest problem being that this one has the mounting bracket on the side instead of these feet right here. Like, to bolt them both in the same location, they're going to be oriented differently. So we'll have to deal with that, but other than that, I think it'll be pretty fine. So let's go ahead and throw this one in and get rolling. Alright, we've got that mounted in there. Yeah, the solenoid's running up and down because the bracket difference. The previous ones would have been like that. But all the connections have plenty of room, so it's not an issue. Let's finish putting the battery tray in here and see if it works. Alright, we are ready for the moment of truth again, and hopefully for the last time. Hopefully this is the true moment of truth. Does that make sense? Contact. Absolutely nothing. Why is there absolutely nothing? So I'm worse than before. Let me disconnect these wires and alternate them. Absolutely nothing. How is that possible? What if I've been fighting a bad fuse somehow? The fuse looks fine. The starter solenoid is not getting the signal. So let's double check instructions on here, make sure we didn't miss anything. I'm baffled. Why is this? This is a brand new solenoid. Well, I run out of time for today, at least it seems like it, and this thing is being a little bit more troublesome than I thought it would be. What am I missing? So I've been thinking about what could be going on with the electrical system here, and my guess is that there's something wrong with the ground. Like there may be a bad ground somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the battery stuff back out again, look at the solenoid, and I may introduce the grounding strap to it and use that instead of the other black wire that plugs into the solenoid. I may try to use the grounding strap and see if that works instead. And I'm going to look around and see if there's anything else that looks like it could be an obvious issue. But when I turn the key on, it's getting power to the system. We hear the solenoid clicking in the carburetor. I'm going to pull this stuff back out. Obviously something's not working, but you know what this means? This means all the solenoids I've thrown in there, they may not be bad solenoids. So that means I can't throw them out yet. I thought I was going to be able to put this new solenoid in here and it'd work fine. I know all those other solenoids were bad, but I still don't know that because this one is having as much trouble as any of them. Somehow the solenoid is not getting the right command to crank over, and maybe it's because it has a bad ground. Alright, I got tired of taking my battery in and out to work on the solenoid, so I relocated it over here. Temporarily, of course. Alright, we got the grounding strap on here, which is this wire which came with it, which is basically just running a loop over to the foot. Right down there. So it's bolted in right there. Can't see it very well. Here's the other wire that was attached to the solenoid. So we will see if this works now. Absolutely nothing. I admit, this is a little frustrating. Maybe it's a defective solenoid. Okay, so check my voltmeter out. 12.82 volts. It's fitting for a brand new battery. Okay, so that ground is working. The ground is basically the black wire that came away from the solenoid. Now I'm going to turn the key to the spring zone and start zone. It should pop voltage up on here. Okay, it's popping up 6 volts. That's interesting. That would imply a bad connection somewhere. Okay, so we're not getting enough voltage through everything back to our starter. Bad ground, loose connection. I'll be honest with you, it could be my ignition switch. I'm gonna go grab another ignition switch. Okay, we've got another ignition switch here to plug in. That'd be amazing if this fixed everything. Oh. Yes! Well, how about that? How about that? Well, that's pretty fitting, actually. So I was getting a bad contact inside my ignition switch. That was the culprit. It wasn't my solenoid. Fired right off there. It needs a real choke though to actually get going. Okay, so my question is, were my solenoids really bad that I was using or not? Or were they just getting too low voltage? I don't want to waste time troubleshooting these old solenoids right now. I think we're going to roll with this one, put everything back together, put a new ignition switch in. This ignition switch, it's not new, it's used, but I kind of wish I'd done a little testing previously now. I was testing without using my testing tools, so if I had used my voltmeter before, if I could have identified that was happening, that would have helped. But I had a situation where something was sort of working enough that it was basically faking that it was working fine, because I thought I was getting power to the solenoid, because I was, but I just wasn't getting enough power to the solenoid. it's getting power to it. You can hear it clicking, so the key is working fine. And you could verify that with the voltmeter. If I had used my voltmeter, I would have been able to find that out sooner, but I didn't, because I was like, okay, we're getting power to the solenoid. That means the solenoid must be bad. And I'll be honest, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you want to try the easy thing first. But in reality, it probably would have been easier to pull out my voltmeter and check that. It just didn't even, that just doesn't normally happen, so I didn't even really think that I should go down that path. And troubleshooting is a little bit subjective. You have logical troubleshooting steps, and you also have practical experience troubleshooting steps. So what I'm saying is, sometimes to troubleshoot something correctly, you start on one end and you work your way all the way to the other end, leaving nothing undone really, as much as possible. But practical experience sometimes dictates that you step ahead 3 or 4 steps to something that you know commonly fails, and sometimes that'll save you time. In this case, it didn't. I really should have just pulled out the voltmeter though. We all keep learning, we got it figured out. Let's put this ignition switch in here and let's rock and roll. So the ignition switch is pretty easy to replace, really. I just squeeze those to put it back, push it back through. However, these like to break. The used one I have already is missing one. You can see that. Okay, let's throw this in and see if it's too loose to use. Yeah, that's a problem. I may go see if I can pull one out of another mower I've got. Oh, I didn't hear any cracks. Perfect. Alright, so I am going to throw the battery back in the way it's supposed to be, put the hood back on this thing. We'll be all fine and dandy. Remember that screwdriver I was missing earlier? Well, it's actually under here. There it is. That's the one I normally use to jump solenoids. I was wondering where it was, and of course it was under the mower. It's really the only place it could have been. Alright, let's go ahead and get the seat glued up on this thing. Here's my glue. I've done this before. I am now a professional. I did this in a previous video, so I'm probably going to do a lot of time lapse here. I'm still not really a professional, despite what I may have said. Alright, well, I got most of the glue off of here. I did not go all out trying to get all the glue off, because I kind of wanted to see if it's really worth the effort. More so with the seat cushion. I did not try to get all the glue off of here. That stuff stays on there pretty tight. That would take a while, at least for me, to try to get it all off, so I'm going to experiment. So at this point, I'm basically just going to get the glue plug out of there, if I can. Get my clamps all positioned, which is going to be ratchet tie down straps wrapped around here. We'll use the boards over the top of the cushion to kind of help force it down better and keep the straps from cutting into the cushion. Hopefully tomorrow we can look at it all cured up. Alright, got the seat pretty much glued up. I think it looks pretty nasty. I don't think I did a good job. It's late, I'm tired, not super happy with how it turned out, but this is kind of a guinea pig, kind of a test. I've done one of these before, and honestly it may have turned out better than this, I'm not sure. At least this time I realized I should wipe off the glue that's places where I don't want it, because once it's hardened, it doesn't really pick off very easily. It's pretty stubborn stuff, which is good. I think the answer to this whole situation is using black glue, if you can find something that's black. Alright, well it is the next day now, so let's see what we got going here. See if everything is cured up well enough. Let's go ahead and release all these straps and see what this is going to look like. I've heard that a heat gun will do quite a bit to bring out these crinkles. Why don't we go ahead and give that a shot and see if it'll bring those out real quick. Alright, so I think this finished seat turned out pretty good. Yes, black would look better. Yes, I could try to take some paint and paint all that. I don't really have any black paint here to do that with. But I think this is going to be a good test of the durability and longevity of the glue. So if I keep it here, I can test it out and see how well it works. Alright everyone, so this project turned out really well. We learned some things along the way, but this mower is ready to go. I could sell it now, probably wash it first, but I could sell this mower now, but I'm not going to because I have other plans for it. I think I'm going to keep this mower around so I can use it to test out parts that don't have another good way of being tested. So basically, like if I got a junk mower that had like a bad engine but a good transmission, possibly a good transmission, I don't really have a great way to test those out. So if it's like a 5 or 6 speed, I should be able to throw it in here and test it out, or I could just pull the engine out of here and throw it in that chassis. But then you run into like electrical issues and stuff, so it's probably gonna make more sense to swap out transmissions. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking to do in the future for this mower. We probably will sell it at some point, maybe next year, I don't really know. Yeah, this turned out great. We swapped out the axle, we replaced the solenoid, the battery, we fixed the deck, we glued the seat down, and we probably didn't need to replace the solenoid. We probably have a little over $50 in here. The solenoid was like 17 bucks, the battery is 35, which is good because all fixed up and for sale, it's probably only worth like $600 on the high side. Anyhow, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to check out some other videos on the channel. If you guys want to like and subscribe or leave a comment, I would be very happy if you did. As always, don't be afraid to get out there and make mistakes. Go break a wrench, let's keep making stories, and we'll catch you on the next one.